I would like to call to order our August 31st, 2020 Board of Aldermen special meeting, the Unified Development Ordinance update public hearing. I'll call on Reverend Lowe Davis for our invocation. Please stand, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Let us pray. Almighty God, creator of heaven and earth, we thank you for all the many blessings you've bestowed upon us, the ones we've seen and the ones we have not seen. We ask tonight that you guide us in making right decisions that respect and honor your creation. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Davis. Item 4 is approval of the agenda, and you have it in front of you. It's basically the public hearing for the UDO update. Okay, have a motion by Mr. Lombardi and a second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5 is our UDO update public hearing. This is been a very long-term project, and I want to thank the Planning Board for their diligence. And if you're with the Planning Board, if you're members, would you please stand? Okay, we have 3 members. We have 4 members. So thank you for being here. We have Coach, we have Chairman Hayden, we have Rich Bandera, and we have Will Hewitt in the corner over there. Thank you for your work. I also want to recognize City Planner Thomas Lloyd. Thank you, Thomas, and also Wes McLeod from the Council of Government. Thank you. Well, Tanya, thank you as well. I appreciate that. You unsung hero. That's a pretty good compliment, and I concur. Thank you. We're not adopting the UDO tonight. Again, this is for public comment. The citizens have the opportunity to speak. This is their time for their comments, their concerns, and that type thing. Southport is a canvas, and the UDO helps to guide the artists in their work. I want to quote, former First Lady Becky Howard: "Life is short, art is forever." So what you're doing for this process with the UDO will affect generations to come. So that's why this work is so important. And I appreciate the Board of Aldermen, the Planning Board, and everyone involved in working on this. And again, in particular, our 2 liaison, Mayor Pro Tem Karen Mosteller, and John Allen. Thank you, Mr. Allen, for all you've done as well. So if anyone would like to speak, if you'd come up to the podium, take off your mask, press the button so the microphone will work, and we'll be happy to hear from you, and state your name and your address.
Excuse me, sir, could you move? I'm over here. Can you move to your right just a little bit? Move, maybe roll it over that way.
Well, this way? Oh, I got you.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. My name is Rick Mitchell. I live at 314 Willis Drive here in Southport. My area or questions, an area of concern is the accessory dwelling. And I want to first of all thank Thomas Lloyd. I've been dealing with issues of I bought the lot next to me and how to work things out, and he's been very responsive and helpful in dealing with that and answering my questions. And I, so in the UDO, an accessory dwelling, residential, you can have an 800 square foot accessory dwelling, but if it's an accessory dwelling over a garage, the garage is limited to 530 square feet footprint, which if you try to put something like, an apartment or accessory dwelling over a 530 square foot footprint, it's hard. And then the other thing it doesn't address then in that 530 square foot, at least in that part of the UDO, it may be in other places and definitions and so forth, and I've missed it. So if I have a 530 square foot garage, well, let's just say it's 20 by 26, that's 520. Then if I have stairs going up to that apartment or dwelling, do they count in the footprint? Does a shed utility building that might be built off the side of that garage, is that part of the footprint? And I guess my real thing is at 530 square feet, if you're allowed to make an 800 square foot dwelling, not just no garage involved, why is the 530 is pretty limiting? And you may have consciously done that, but that's a small footprint to try to do something with. So I just want you to consider that, look at that, and see if there's any of that, and then consider what is actually considered in that footprint. Is it just the garage, or is it anything that's to the side, a porch, a shed utility, or anything like that? And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Do we have an answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, this is public comment. It's,
Okay.
We
We'll get
listen.
back to it.
Yeah, this is public comment. Whatever they say, then we don't respond immediately. We don't respond at all from the board immediately during public comment. Anyone else who would like to speak? No further public comment at this time. Oh, that's right, Madam City Clerk. Yes, we have one to read. Thank you.
I do have a comment from an email from Kathy Cabral. She said, I am unable to attend the August 31st special meeting for public comment on the draft UDO, but I would like to make this statement to our elected officials. The UDO is the overarching document that dictates development in Southport and will drive the character of the town in the future. From what I can see, the UDO was last updated 10 years ago and will not likely see another update for 10 more years. Because of those 2 points, it is imperative that nothing in the approved UDO creates unintended consequences as future development is considered for Southport. I do not believe people will object to development, but it should be responsible development. It should reflect the wishes of the citizens of Southport and should be emblematic of the vision for the future of our city. It should also reflect our size, our infrastructure limitations, and the city's financial condition. I refer you to section 2.11B2 of the August 10th, 2020 draft UDO, which deals with conditional zoning. How is non-residential zoning district defined? Does it include open space? Does it include plan unit developments? I think it is important that the term be very clear defined in the document. I believe both open space and planned unit developments should be excluded from the definition of a non-residential zoning district. I believe this would completely eliminate the prospect of conditional zoning change to be allowed for a planned unit development and allow the citizens of Southport to have more input on future development in the town. In a circumstance like Project Indigo, the strict definition of non-residential zoning district would limit the developers from getting the property rezoned without public comment. Given the recent press in the Wilmington Business News, it is important that the language in the UDO is amended. It is no secret that the 211 corridor is facing development on a dramatic scale with those residents looking to Southport as their urban center. This will put additional strain on our infrastructure and community. I am seeking a commitment from the aldermen to seriously consider including a clear-cut definition to non-residential zoning district to further protect our city and maintain responsible development in Southport. This is our best chance to preserve the heart and soul of the city that we care for so deeply. Thank you, Kathy Cabral.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Again, anyone else? Okay. I will now turn this part of the meeting over to our city planner, Thomas Lloyd, and Mr. Wes McLeod. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. All right, so Wes, would you like to just kind of go through this standard just so everybody kind of understands and we're all on the same page? And then if we need to look into adjusting anything, we can do that after Wes explains it.
Thank you, Thomas. So off-street parking ratios. First, let's understand quickly, off-street parking means that it is, if you come and open a business, you do new construction, you have a change of use where an existing building changes out and there's a new thing that comes in, there's certain amounts of parking that you're required to put on your site, not in the right-of-way, etc. And depending on the location within a city, there may be constraints to providing a large amount of surface parking on a lot. Up in you know, the Walmart area and in the highway commercial, for example, in the city of Southport, you have larger lots, you have less constraints to providing surface parking, coupled with the fact that typically folks are driving to and from those places, so you really do need to have the off-street parking. In Southport, you currently have a parking overlay district that's sort of an odd amalgamation of locations where no parking is necessarily required. The provision is not exactly clear. One of the attempts that we have tried to do as part of this UDO update is clarify what the intentions are of the city for requiring parking. And I'll add that there is no silver bullet for parking. It is a tricky subject to figure out. And so there's going to be no fix that's going to work for everybody. In all of your zoning districts, except CBD and BD, all of the parking standards are essentially unchanged, except for some, clarifying issues. Where we have tried to come to some sort of compromise are in the CBD and the BD zoning district. CBD obviously is right in the downtown area. BD extends up your primary corridor. So what the current standard states is, or the proposed standard is that if you have a business that's currently operating where there's a vacant building, someone comes in and they change the use from a retail store to a restaurant or any number of businesses that are permitted in that district, they're not going to be required to come in and provide additional parking on that site. Now, my understanding is that's the way the ordinance has been enforced, even though the ordinance is not written that way currently. You actually would be required to provide that off-street parking if you're reading the letter of the law in your ordinance. Now, there's not necessarily parking required in that parking overlay. The issue that we had with that is the way that's delineated, and perhaps it makes more sense to expand upon that. However, if you have an applicant that wants to come in and expand the amount of usage area of a building, even if it's outdoor usage, by more than 25%, that additional increase in parking would be required to be built or allocated on site. Or maybe they already have it there and they're fine. They don't necessarily need to construct more parking. Part of the reason for this is, one, it helps ensure that those properties continue to be viable. It is not only expensive, but also oftentimes on these small lots, you can't actually put the amount of parking that may be required per the regs. And so right there, you're eliminating your chances for commerce, et cetera, and achieving the level of vibrancy that I believe the city wants to see happen along House Street. The other thing that we did include in here is that ensuring that if there is a residential use that's proposed, whether it's a change of use, redevelopment, et cetera, they're going to have to comply with those parking requirements. So they're going to need to allocate some parking on their site such that they're not utilizing public off-street parking. And then the last thing is that for new construction, someone that's taking a vacant lot and coming in, they're gonna have to provide all their parking from the get-go. So they will have a full understanding of the site constraints versus someone that's had a building that's maybe been there 60, 70, 100 years where there were no parking regulations. So that's a quick, I don't know if I made that clear or not, and I want to answer any questions that the board may have. The last thing I'll add is that assuming that, well, depending on how this transpires, the goal would be then to remove that parking overlay because inherently it would no longer make sense for it to be in place. And that would happen through a rezoning process after the text portion of this UDO were to be adopted.
So I was just going to expound on your explanation. My understanding is as well for new construction, if they have on-street parking in front of the property, up to 50% of the parking requirement can count towards that on-street parking as well?
That's correct. And again, the thought being there is, like your highway commercial area where you don't have any, publicly available parking that you can walk to and from, you do have a walkable, a good bit of the city that's walkable, so that if folks have some place they can park nearby, that inherently, would make sense and help alleviate some of the on their private property parking that they would need.
For clarity and for the purpose of the members of the public who are here, can you give us some examples of some CBD businesses that fall into this category? I'm thinking Christmas House. They only have the parking out front, on the street and across the street.
That's a perfect example. So say Christmas House closed, someone else would want to come in there. If you didn't have a provision that said no additional parking is required for a change of use, I don't know what those folks would have to do. They may have to lop off a building. The building would just remain vacant. So, if you are actually going to enforce, the off-street parking provision, that would require a certain amount of parking. I mean, if you're looking at 1 per 100 square foot, say that was a restaurant and it was off-street parking, they could have, I'm not sure how large the use area of that building would be, but you've got quite a lot of off-street parking that's going to say it's 2,000 square feet. You got 20 off-street parking spaces that are somehow going to have to be constructed on that site.
Well, just to clarify one issue, so when we say change of use, that is not the same as change of ownership, correct?
Right.
If a business that is a restaurant, they sell it to somebody else and the new person opens it as a restaurant, that's a change of ownership, not a change of use, correct? Okay.
But if we go back to the Christmas House, and I hope they don't get upset being used as the example, but right now they're all retail. If they turned into a restaurant, how would this apply to them?
If the proposed rules say they were adopted, if they changed into a restaurant, they didn't modify the extent of their building that was utilized for that retail operation, they would be able to open and not necessarily provide any additional parking. Okay. And this is where it gets into not having a silver bullet, because on the one hand, you are protecting the vibrancy of your city by not bulldozing, buildings and putting in surface parking. But on the other hand, you're potentially creating some conflicts by virtue of the fact that where, say, that retail business uses X number of parking spots outside, maybe if there's a restaurant comes in, they're going to use more. But I caution you not to think of it as sort of a black and white, more of an ebb and flow. Who knows if that restaurant's going to be there forever? Maybe it's there for 2 years, and another retail place opens up where another restaurant is. So it's hard to predict the future on what's going to happen. What we try to do here is figure out what's the best fit for the city in understanding all these complex relationships.
Thank you.
I don't think I ever realized that we're talking about business. I think what the conflict for me is the CBD, which I totally get. We have buildings and we want to protect them, and that's why we bring back in that 25% relevance. But this is what I think. I think they're two different conversations. I think it's a zoning conversation. I think part of House Street, the CBD district, needs to be extended down House Street because we have similar properties that don't have a big enough footprint. But I don't think it is the whole business district. And I think I would rather see us separate the business district out of this and then approach what we need to from a zoning standpoint to extend the CBD that applies those rules, because the business district goes all the way up to House Street to what, 14th? I don't know. 14th Street. So I can see the central business district going to the clock tower or there at Mad River, you know, where the properties are smaller and very much like central business district. But to go all the way out, and then it also impacts the yacht basin. I mean, that's zone business over there, and other things are. So the hotel, I don't know how it would affect. The hotel is zone business over there on Moore Street. So that's for me. I think all this is great for CBD. I just think we need to extend it, but that's a different process.
Thomas, do you or Wes have any reaction to the concept of extending CBD further up Howe Street?
Yeah, I mean, it would just be it'd be a separate process. I mean, it probably could be done, but, you know, it's something we would have to address afterwards and go through the zoning map amendment process. And it'd be changing a lot of people's properties from what they currently are. Although, you know, some might say some of the changes will be more favorable for those properties. Wes, do you have any comments or unintended consequences you could see from this? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
when you get into rezoning a property, you really need to understand what the benefits are you're getting out of it. It's sort of like taking a sledgehammer to kill a gnat, I think, in this case. I think I would address parking, but not address it through rezoning. If there are issues that you feel like there's things in the BD that need to be CBD, maybe parking is one of them, but there should be a host of other things that should accompany that. Maybe it's the uses, the setbacks, all these other things that would go into be taken into consideration with a base rezoning. And you know, I don't want this board to be under any illusion that when you do, even if it is 6, 7, 10 property type rezoning proposal, that's not an easy thing. Despite if there is a benefit to folks, they may not believe so. And that should not be discrediting to them. It's just their inherent concern about what is happening to their properties and why is it happening. So, you know, just be mindful of that. And that's not to say that this process can't be, you can't accomplish that through this process. And the only other thing I'll add is that, you know, I think some of this was supposed to address the yacht basin, and the yacht basin is zone BD, and so, you know, and maybe the intention is to leave their parking standards as is. Just be aware of that.
So just a recap of what Wes said. I mean, rezonings are all the it's based on all the permitted uses that would be allowed in CBD, not just, you know, the parking standpoint of it. So I think that would just be something that really we would have to consider if we went down that road.
One other issue with rezoning Howe Street to CBD is that CBD has 0 setbacks. And I know one of the things that certainly I pushed for, and I think everybody saw the value in, was that we needed some more setback requirements between BD and adjoining residential properties.
And John, it would also affect buffer yards as well.
Right. So it would undo what we kind of agreed to do previously in that regard, which gives me a little heartburn.
What it is now is not this for business district, correct? Or what our current zoning is not this, the parking. So
My understanding is that there's a line somewhere up Howell Street, maybe most of it, that it has been more or less administered as the way we're proposing to do now for many, many years. So you have many businesses that are there that otherwise may not have been able to be there if you were operating under the letter of the law as currently written.
We haven't enforced the existing ordinance, basically, for certain parcels.
And look, you know, CBD, you have much more density, but up Howe Street, I mean, those lots are all pretty small. I mean, we're not talking, you know, big tracts, large structures, et cetera. I mean, there is, and that's not to say that you can't have in place the rules you want to have in place here, but you don't have a lot of space to work with, you know, and almost all the way up to that end of BD. I mean, obviously there's some larger tracts, but I mean, you can take City Hall, for example. I mean, you know, I don't know how many parking spaces you have there, but that is a larger tract, and you don't even have that many parking spaces there. You know, we could count it, but say you took a smaller lot and tried to provide 20 spaces, you maybe have 25, 30 max. So you can imagine the difficulties that would transpire on a lot of these lots if someone really had to provide those off-street parking. And they could do it, but it may mean that they need to be garages, et cetera, a whole host of other, you know, difficult scenarios.
I also want to make one thing real clear, that this doesn't change the required parking for the businesses as they exist currently. This is only in the event of a change of use or redevelopment. So, I mean, I think it's important to keep that in mind. It's not like we're just saying, okay, BD, nobody in BD has any more parking requirements. It's only if there's a change of use or redevelopment of the property.
If they expand, I'm just going to use a yacht basin restaurant just as an example. If they expand less than 25%, they don't have to have any additional parking. That's my understanding, right? We're getting ready to expand their ability to have parking by making it 100 square feet instead of right now it's measured by four top per space. 100 square feet is a whole different calculation. So we're in effect forgiving, and that was part of the conversation, I think, as I recall in the workshops, forgiving, being more forgiving with that in the yacht basin. This is yet another 25% of potential utilization that will require no more parking there if it's business district. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing or whatever, but I'm just saying I mean, what we just need to know, as well as I'm assuming the hotel could, depending on what's allowed on the site, the size of the site, I know limits some, but if it expanded, it wouldn't need additional parking as long as it wasn't 70 rooms, as long as it wasn't 25% of that more.
Is there a definition of redevelopment? What does redevelopment mean exactly?
Any combination of repairs, reconstruction, rehabilitation, addition, or other improvement of a structure or lot, including demolition or replacement of a structure taking place during any 1 year period. Redevelopment may also be associated with a change of use.
Where did 25% come from?
It's, you know,
Ordinance previously, or?
No,
Okay.
no. It's a calculation a threshold that we've put in here. I mean, that it could be more or less. It could be 50%, et cetera. We thought it was it's a good trigger, to capture if someone is potentially expanding their building to the point that it could have some impacts. I mean, mind you, it would depend on from business to business.
John, are you thinking you would like to see it more or less than 25%?
Possibly less. The reality is that a lot of the properties we're talking about don't have any ability to expand their footprint anyway. I mean, 90% of them, you probably couldn't add any extra square footage anyway.
Just footprint.
Floor area, so this includes, and it's in the definition, but this would include if someone's expanding their outdoor seating, it is captured in the gross amount of use area of that property. And up, that's correct.
Quick, I think I'm still working off an older copy of this, but is it still is this in table 3.4? Is that correct? And on the second line of the header there, it says change of use of redevelopment, and has that been changed?
That's been changed.
It says or.
That's right.
Okay.
We already identified that.
And look, this is, I'm not suggesting that this is an easy decision by any stretch of the imagination. It's a difficult thing to figure out. I will tell you that the general, at least for the planning profession, city planning, et cetera, creating walkable communities, the folks are moving more towards, less off-street parking. They want to have private property occupied by the business, and they want to have folks walking to and fro, and they want to have vibrancy. Obviously, that comes with potential conflicts. But I also think that's the thing that Southport wants, and that's the thing that Southport has always been. Folks walking around, going from place to place. And so, I don't know. It's hard to figure this out, and I can assure you that, say you even went with what is in here, or if it was modified, and Thomas, as I have talked about this, it's likely that there will be some tweaks to it once it's been truly tested. And so, I just want to add that. I don't believe, and I could be wrong, I don't believe the city wants to be in a position where they're stymieing development in favor of providing, off-street parking, or, having to construct off-street parking.
It sounds like unless, just make sure I have it, unless you build something new, you have to provide parking. But if you're already there, or if you expand greater than 25%, it sounds like that, if you can find a spot that's safe, park and walk. And that's what we want in Southport. We don't want someone parking literally in someone's front yard on their, sidewalk, that type thing. But I mean, at least downtown and in the yacht basin, parking is part of one of the issues, along with lighting around with the traffic pattern. I mean, there are a whole host of things that go into this discussion, and it just sounds like if we try to make it as simple as possible, we find a place to park, you can park and walk to the business. I like the word vibrant. We want a vibrant community, a vibrant business district. We want it to be safe. So safety first, but vibrancy second. And we go from there without, and I like the idea about not using zoning to change to fix a problem. If you can fix the parking issue, and I know that with great minds that have already, you guys that have already been working on it, you'll come up with the silver bullet, Wes. I know you will. That will that will solve the issue.
I don't want to cut off debate or conversation, but I'd like to see us, what I'd propose is that we leave BD in here, but change the 25% to 10%. Yes. My reasoning is that I do think 25% is a lot. If you think about a business increasing their floor area by 25%, that's a quarter of their building. You could add a lot of parking need in 25% increase. So.
Use an actual example again. Oliver's Restaurant, they've put picnic tables, seating outside now. I don't know what the percentage of increase that is, and of course they don't have any parking. But there's, after 5 o'clock, there's plenty of parking on the street. What would this do then? Silver bullet?
They're at the time, they're frozen in time at the time the UDO is adopted, I believe. Is that not correct, Wes and Thomas? And then this would apply if they expand beyond what they have at that moment in time. Is that right?
But I mean, I think we are also in an unprecedented time when it comes to the pandemic and, you know, the reduction of percentage that restaurants can have, you know, seating inside at a certain time. So, I mean, I do think, you know, we got to be a little bit, you know, work with the restaurant some in this scenario. But assuming that this wasn't going on right now and, you know, everything was normal, that would be the case.
Thinking non-COVID, obviously. Thomas, do you have heartburn or any issue with doing 10% instead of 25%?
I mean, I personally do not. If it's, you know, the will of the board, we can do that. I do think it might cut down on some of the bigger properties that we do have that are existing. If they are trying to, it'll work that out, basically, is what I'm saying. But I mean, I'm fine with it. It's something that we can follow for sure.
Oh, and to your point, John, part of this whole conversation was for scale, to help manage scale. Yeah, so we didn't have things torn down and boxed out.
Would it be appropriate to ask if any of the planning board members want to weigh in on this?
Up to the podium there, Mr. Bandera. That'd be great. Thank you.
My name's Rich Bandera. I live at 309 Clarendon Ave. I think part of the 25%, I mean, COVID is an example of why outdoor seating is a perfect example to allow that to occur. A lot of businesses around town have taken over that unused outdoor area to have like vibrant activities there that are probably well over the 25%, and they probably wouldn't be in business without it. And I think if 10% is included, if it covers actual physical structure as well as outdoor area, I think that's, my opinion is it's very low, because there may be another circumstance where we need, this pandemic may come to an end, but there may be other times that we need to have that flexibility. And I think that that would be something to think about. The other part of it is that there's two different things about occupancy that is based on parking, and it's also based on life safety that the building code regulates. And, you know, you might have a building that may be, let's say, 1,000 square feet. The building code may regulate that to a certain maximum occupancy that's far beneath what the parking requirement is. And so I think those things may want to be looked at to see how they tie back into one another, because the building code kind of dictates by life safety rather than tabletops or number of people you can have at in a restaurant as seated. So I think they're not one and the same. And I think that you'd find that the building code would kind of be the thing that really drives that from a life safety point of view rather than parking requirement. That's just really what I have to say. I think what Wes has done is a great job trying to be a fair approach to the commercial business district and business district in terms of coming up with a formula for percentages. And honestly, it is like kind of it's an approach. It's like nobody's tested it yet, so you don't know. But I think that it's a more even approach to the parking issue around town rather than people in the central business district benefiting while other businesses may suffer from not being allowed to kind of have a use that would be appropriate in those areas because of parking. And I think that 10% may, you know, my 2 cents would be a little bit low for it to allow them to do that. And so that's all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say that I'm reluctant to change from the 25% at this time, because I don't have a true example of harm with the way it's set right now. And the goal, you know, is to have a occupied, you know, business district. So unless I had an example of a harm that this is deterring business growth or reoccupancy use, then that's all. It might have to be revisited, but 10% might also limit reusing structures or something. So if we went to that 10% instead of leaving it at 25, that could be detrimental that way. It's just a thought. I don't know for sure. We don't know, I don't think.
So I just want to make sure I understand all the ramifications. So every year I could put in 25% theoretically and not have to add any parking if I had space or inclination. Correct.
That's sort of how these things work, unfortunately. It's the same thing, you know, how it may work with a flood damage prevention ordinance. Other things are calculated over the course of a year. Could there be a handful of folks that abuse that provision? Absolutely. You know, but again, I mean, I think it's been fairly laissez-faire here for some time in terms of and there's not really, you know, folks haven't been adding additional parking as is. And Thomas can correct me if I'm wrong. So, you know, I think this is closer to what you've got doing, to what you're doing now, and short of just saying no parking regs at all for CBD and BD. And I know that's something that we discussed at one point as well.
Okay, to help wrap it up, but also to confuse the issue a little bit more, where Yacht Basin Eatery used to be, and they're rebuilding that. So do they have certain parking requirements based on table size or footage, or it's what it was previously?
Yes, what it was previously, and you know, I don't have the permit in front of me, but they do have boat slips currently that go towards that parking requirement, and the owner of that property is also the owner of Fishy Fishy, and he does have parking that can be allotted towards that as well.
So they're in good standing because not only they have this extra parking at Fishy Fishy because the same owner, but he has boat slips.
Yes, sir.
So again, it seems like that whatever language you use, you want to have it flexible so these businesses remain vibrant. It doesn't sound like many of them can go up even 10%, much less 25%. So whatever language you feel like is best, and that's what we need, I recommend that we adopt. And I don't know if we have to decide it right now. We will be coming back at this again. If you want to come back with some appropriate language, or if the aldermen have the language that we can knock out now, that's fine with me. But I think it's an important issue, and if we need time to think about it and to revise appropriately, we can. And I'll leave it to the city planner to give us some guidance on that. And Wes, how do we move forward so we can go into the next
I would
topic?
say really it's up to the board and what the board wants us to do. So I mean, Wes, would it be appropriate for them to have a vote or to have a motion just so we're clear on what we're doing?
10 or 25%, or yeah, it sounds me like it's as it currently stands is a question of whether that trigger should be 10 or 25%. And
Why
I
don't
think
we
there's
go with your,
I think there's probably 3 options, actually, or at least I think the mayor pro tem probably hasn't given up on the concept of pulling BD out of this entirely and moving towards a CBD rezoning. So I guess there are at least potentially 3 options that we're still talking about, correct?
I mean, I can step away from that because it is a very involved, the whole, would have to think through that whole, because of uses.
Uses, the setbacks, as well as buffer yards that would all be in play there.
are we thinking that we would like to not deal with this in this UDO update and come back at it later?
Well, we need to make a decision, I think, tonight in order to get it, if we're changing anything, in order to get it advertised so we can have another public meeting.
I guess the question at this point is, are we going to leave it at 25% or are we going to change it, basically? And if we're going to change it, what are we going to change it to? So.
You originally said 15%, which sounds like a nice compromise. Not too, not too big.
That's fine. I don't remember saying 15, but anyway, I mean, that's fine, I guess. I think 25 just strikes me as being a lot. I mean, you have a restaurant that has 200 seats in it, 25% is another 50 seats. That's a lot of additional capacity to add without having to add any parking, in my mind.
All right, so let's, since it's up to the board, and we need a motion. I'll entertain a motion.
I move John makes the motion.
The motion, either 10 or 25, I think that's what the discussion was.
Well, or
15
somewhere in
or
between.
whatever you'd like.
Make a motion.
Go.
I'll make the motion that we rewrite this first box on the table 3.4. So instead of saying is not expanded by greater than 25% to is not expanded by greater than 15%.
We have a motion, Alderman Park.
Second.
We have a second by Lo Davis. Any further discussion on this?
Would it also include the second box? Yeah.
So it would, by virtue of the fact that the second box is impacted. So yes, it sounds to me like the
Yes,
motion is
I
just
agree that
15%.
You amend the motion to reflect so that it would affect both articles that state 25%. So there would be 15 is what the number percentage would be instead of 25.
Okay, we have an amended motion.
Second.
Okay, second by Lo Davis. Any further discussion?
Yes, sir. And I'm worried because I deal with real estate. I sell commercial real estate here and there, and you have a lot of businesses that can't stay in business as it is. And I see this as stifling the possibility of shop at Leonard has gone through 3 or 4 owners in 2 years, and that's one of those areas. I think other people own property on Nash or whatever that if they wanted to go to 2 stories, it would be a detriment to their viability. So I appreciate the compromise, but I won't vote to constrict it to that point. I think it's going down a dangerous road.
Any further comments on the percentage? And again, Wes, the percentage, what it was calculated, is that something standard that other cities use or towns use, or?
Oftentimes, there's triggers for nonconformities that they start to ramp up, that you have to correct things once you do a certain amount of redevelopment or addition. 25% is one of the ones that's commonly used, and that's why it's in there. But again, it's up to this board on kind of what you want to proceed with.
And this is new. This is in addition to business, right? Although you're saying you've been practically doing this, but according to the old UDO, this allows an expansion. It gives flexibility.
Yes, it's different than the old UDO. It didn't have that in business district previously.
The only other thing is it just, 25 is an easily enforceable number, so it has to go with administration. It's not to say that should outweigh some of the other particulars, but you got to remember there's a human that's trying to figure out how to make sure that folks are doing as they should based on the ordinance. And that's another reason why we have gone from a lot of these, tables or chairs or, church pews to just a gross square footage to help understand what that really easy to understand how much parking should be required per space, and it allows for some transferability between uses.
Just to comment, I made the motion, doesn't mean I support it. I just wanted to get it out there so we can have a vote. I think the original document is fine because of the reasons he's provided. I think you should trust the group that brought this forward, and let's see if it works.
And I'll just have one last comment. If I could just ask Mr. Bandera, again, your thoughts, what would be the ideal number? You're an architect. Yes, if you would, it's an important vote. What would be the ideal number from an architect point of view? Please, if you would come to the podium. I feel like we need to make sure we do this as best we can.
Excuse me, I'm not behind the desk like you are, but those decisions are yours, really. But I think
we just want information. Yes.
My 2 cents are just that I don't think the 25% ever was raised as a concern for the time we were going through this. I think it was presented early on, and I don't think there was any vibration to that to be concerned about it. My bigger concern, like I mentioned, is that you have these buildings with, not just, not all buildings have no room to expand, but the bigger concern is not the physical structure, but the outdoor area that's used in a real flex kind of space. And if that's restricted also, it's all about enforcement, honestly, but if that also comes into the calculation, that becomes very limiting. And maybe, I would guess I don't have a real issue with the 15% if it were like the physical expansion, but if it translates as well to the outdoor area that could be utilized. You have multiple businesses that are trying to make it all up and down House Street using that outdoor space. And if enforcement went into play to really clamp down on that or restrict it differently for future businesses to 10% or 15% even, I think that would be limiting. So I would, if it were me, I would say maybe 15% for the structure and maybe stay at 25% for outdoor area that's utilized in a different way. I just think that would be a way to give people some flex space and create some, like different types of uses that are compatible.
That's great. That's very helpful. Thank you. So, if we look at it this way, these businesses are down, what, 50%, and they've had 0%. Maybe they're at 50%, and it's going to take several years to recover. So the outdoor space, I don't know if this encompasses that or not, but if they're able to add outdoor space safely and that type of thing, I think that at least helps them recover in some way, and that they can keep their employees and that type of thing. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the outdoor part of it. 15%, I mean, if that's what the board wants to do, that's certainly fine with me, but I don't know, does that include their outdoor space? To me, it would just be the physical building itself.
We were talking about physical building and not the outside seating and tables and so forth that we're seeing up and down.
The outdoor seating is important to their survivability and that type of thing.
Sure.
So.
Do we need then to further refine this?
I think Wes has an answer.
It does include, it does include the outdoor area. So, that's, so for parking purposes, floor area includes outdoor seating or retail areas.
Yeah, some of the comments sort of sound like we're restricting their ability to use their outdoor area, which we're talking about only if they expand. If they're using whatever they're using outdoors now, they can continue to use. We're not taking anything away from them. And in fact, this is actually for businesses in BD, this is actually is very much of a loosening of regulations. It's not a tightening. Right now, if they wanted to expand any, they'd have to add on-site parking for everything they do. But we're giving them the ability to expand by 15% without adding any additional parking. I mean, we're actually, we're throwing them a bone.
Okay, so now we have further explanation, so I think everyone can see that it is to the benefit of the businesses and to those who want to go to these restaurants. Is clearer now. So the motion is that we want to, instead of 25%, have it at 15%. Any further discussion? Everyone clear on the motions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
It would be, okay, so 4-2 it looks like. Am I correct? Show of hands, 4. Okay, and those opposed? Be 2. Okay, motion carried, 4-2. Thank you.
it seems to me that in the near future, the city is going to have to provide parking. Because if the way it is now is only going to get more congested. And maybe the city has got to, we got to start looking for a place where we can have a paid parking lot. Because right now, it's crazy parking down here, especially for people who live here. I think that's what we have to put on the agenda. We have to find a place to park cars.
Mr. Lombardi, I'd like to give you the gold star for this evening because we should be providing we want the vibrant. We want these businesses to grow and to stay and to provide services for us and not come and go. We have property that we haven't developed, that we haven't maintained. We do have property that should be converted into true parking areas. On the 400 or 500 block of Atlantic Avenue, we've got a little sign there, but no one knows it's there. So I appreciate, that's what I've been thinking about the whole time, is that we have opportunity to expand this parking and to give the businesses a leg to stand on. So I appreciate your thought there.
All right, if we could go on to the next item of on the UDO.
So I believe the next item, and it's actually fairly close by, Alderman Sharkey had a comment on light source, and it's on page 3-94. Alderman Sharkey, would you like to do that, or would you like me to run through it?
Can we deal with the gentleman's issue who spoke, who's been sitting here the whole time, and I appreciate him staying. Am I out of order there with the accessory building? Can we deal with his issue before it gets dark and make him sit here the whole time to the very end, or is that possible? All right. I really appreciate you coming up to the podium earlier and for staying this long. And he was dealing with the accessory. Can we talk about that for a minute? Please, Mayor, is that all right?
Sure. Up to our city planner and Wes. Be happy.
Or Thomas, you can. My understanding is that the footprint has to be can't be more than 530 square feet, but the makeup of that accessory dwelling can be up to 800, whether some of it's downstairs or upstairs, whatever it may be. That's the way that and I believe that's the way it's been. Or Thomas, you can.
Well, I was just going to say, I think where the footprint is coming from also is that we have that 530 square feet footprint for it to be 5 feet off the property line. So the footprint is coming in when it comes to the setback as well.
Because this gentleman actually has bought a complete residential lot that he could build a 4,000 square foot house on. Is that right, sir? Isn't that right? Yep, but I know the lot you're talking about, and you've done a great job with it, and to put an accessory structure on it is definitely going to be much better than a house on it. So yes, sir. Okay.
I think the issue is that we're talking about two different issues. One is footprint, one's total square footage. The garage, the footprint can't be more than 530 because if it's an accessory dwelling, by definition, it's got a second floor on it, and so it can be 800. It's still going to be 800 square feet. There's two different issues. There's a 530 square foot footprint and an 800 square foot total square footage. It's not a 530 square foot footprint versus an 800 square foot footprint. You can't have an 800 square foot footprint.
And that sounds like it would make the second story not a full story, but a story and a half type of accessory to get that 800. Is that right?
It can be a full story, it just can't take up the entire, it can't have the same footprint as the garage area, it has to be a little bit smaller. Yeah, I think the sound reasoning for that is just to avoid having very large intrusive structures in people's backyards, lording over their neighbor's backyard.
That is correct.
Matt, I'd like to ask a question about it, though. Is it ever been adopted where an accessory structure has been limited to a percentage based on your primary structure? So an accessory structure couldn't be more than 10%, 10, 20, 15, whatever. And is that a typical way of doing it instead of specifying 530?
A typical way might be 25%. I mean, it just kind of depends. And we've had 25% previously. So.
Ask it because lots are different sizes. So the primary dwelling could be a different size depending on what part of town you're in. So that's why I was asking if you used a percentage scale instead of a set number. And maybe that would satisfy somebody who has a bigger lot than somebody who has a small lot.
I don't recall specifically. This was a change that occurred early on. I believe that there was a push to figure out the max amount of accessory size that folks were satisfied with. And I don't know, Rich we may have to bring Rich in here again to weigh in on why we determined this and went away from the percentage, but I think it was that we just wanted to set the max and then max square footage and then be done by virtue of the fact that structures may change sizes over time, et cetera, primary at least.
I don't have an answer to the percentage question. It's just that 530, I'll just kind of back up for the person who spoke, is that the 530 square feet is a maximum footprint when you're encroaching further into the required setback, meaning that in most cases setbacks, let's say on the side yard is 8 feet and 20 feet in the backyard. And so with a 530 square foot footprint, you can encroach into both of those setback up to 5 feet. It has to stay at 5 feet. So if you're having an accessory apartment above that, it would be restricted to that footprint. So if you were within your setbacks, let's say you were outside of that, and you can still have an accessory building that conforms to those setbacks. You can have an 800 square foot, footprint. That's the limit for an accessory building. That's a dwelling. And I mean, I don't know if it answers Alderman Sharkey's question about percentage, but I think that's kind of where that 530 comes from, and then we did put some caps on the accessory dwelling size, and if you're outside of that, if you're within your setback requirements. So I hope that helps. I'm not sure it does, but thank you.
If I recall, and Rich, I think it may have been that where you had a structure that was, say, 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, there was some concern as to having a 25% allocation for accessory dwelling, and I think that's why we capped it at the 800.
I think it came kind of from, like everything, it comes from a learning lesson on something that was submitted, and then we tried to translate that to a percentage that made reasonable sense for an actual dwelling, and 800 square feet seems to be, a number that seemed palatable.
Yes, ma'am. Please. It's a public hearing, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm Jenna Fontaine. I live at 5223 Shipmass Way in Southport, and I'm just a plain old ordinary person, citizen. I've tried to look at, I downloaded the draft, and I've tried to go through it fairly quickly and not studied minutia, because that's not anything that's kind of above my pay grade. But I do want to say that I really appreciate the attention paid to green space, to parks, also to trying to continue to make this small city very livable. I did have a problem with developments, like the bigger developments, 50 more units, and that the intention, and I know well, I don't know your intention. However, they were in this new revision, a draft revision, they were reducing the needed setbacks. In other words, increasing the approved density, in my mind, the approved density for the builder, okay? And, you know, I live in River Mist, and I look down on Ballast, and I think it's the most ridiculously ugly street I've seen outside of a barracks. And I'm not sure that minimizing density is a good thing. I would like to see setbacks remain the same or increase slightly even. And I know that limits development, but I was here, a week ago, and you know where I am with that. I mean, we need to preserve our wetlands. We need to preserve as much open space in our trees, and I do appreciate that in the revised UDO. But, you know, until our roads, until there's more bikeways, walkways, kind of like keeping our city livable, I think we need to, I would like to see that go back to the old standards and not, you know, reduce the necessary setbacks. That's all I want to say. But I do appreciate so much the intent of most of what I read. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. So in terms of the gentleman's request, Thomas, where are we? Or his understand that it's 530 square foot. That's the footprint, but that's not the total amount of space that you can build. And this is to keep someone from building something extremely large in their backyard and overlooking, as Alderman Allen said it best, you know, overlooking someone's backyard. So have we met his issue or his question, or is there something we need to change or something we need to discuss further in that regard?
I believe so. I believe we've addressed it, but I guess we would have to ask Mr. Mitchell that.
So as long as you know, at least you have your answer, sir. I mean, that's important. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Alderman Spencer. Okay, next item. Thank you.
Yeah, so the next item is on page 394, and it is light source, and it's the light source section, so it's 3.16C there. Alderman Sharkey, would you like me to explain your change, or would you like to do it?
Doesn't matter. I can just give the background. I am proposing a change to number 1 under C. just so that we allow LED type lights in addition to the ones that are already mentioned. So rephrasing the sentence a little bit so that we allow consideration for energy conservation type of fixtures is really the goal here. So my proposal is to reword it: incandescent, fluorescent, metal halide, light emitting diodes, LED, and color corrected high sodium lamps are permitted. The UDO administrator shall have the authority to deny use of particular lamps based on the color spectrum emitted or the lamp brightness. Non-color corrected high pressure sodium lamps are prohibited. And that was no change to anything else.
So just so everyone's on the same page in that section, 2 and 3 would stay the same. So it would only be changing number 1 to the language that Alderman Sharkey just proposed.
Just
316C1.
what's the change exactly? So you're saying that you're just moving LEDs to the preferred category, and instead of having it say the UDO administrator shall have the authority to approve it?
I felt that I would rather we communicate that all these different types of light fixtures are permitted, that I don't know that the intent of the planning board was to say they preferred incandescent when incandescent lights may cost more and they also use more energy. I don't know that that's really their intent. I know the intent is to have a certain color spectrum and not to have overly bright, intense lighting that can be associated with LEDs. So I just wanted to reword it so that we permit LEDs because they're more energy efficient. They're better, for people as far as energy use, but I didn't, preferring permitted. I was just trying to eliminate a category of one over the other.
Well, just read it again.
Yeah, let me read it again, because I also want to make sure the UDO administrator can specify certain lights that are not acceptable. So this is what I propose to be rewritten, okay? Incandescent, fluorescent, metal halide, light emitting diodes, LED, and color corrected high pressure sodium lamps are permitted. So that, therefore, people can pick and choose what type of lamp they want. The UDO administrator, though, shall have the authority to deny the use of particular lamps based on the color spectrum admitted or the lamp brightness. And then the last sentence is exactly the same as what's in there. Non-color corrected high pressure sodium lamps are prohibited.
I think that's good.
Okay, sounds like, as opposed to the parking, it's a slam dunk, silver bullet. That's a very good idea. We'll
It as a motion if that's what you choose.
Yes,
I submit
absolutely.
that as a motion.
Is there a second? Okay, second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, Mr. City Planner, next.
Okay, so sorry I'm jumping around a little bit, but I had all these written down at different times. So another one is one that I identified concerning Board of Adjustment appointments. And if you go to page 2-9, it is right there, and it's B2. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so it's B2, and it's concerning the bottom of B2, and I think we may have discussed it at some point, but it just may not have gotten in the draft at the planning board level. But I do remember potentially discussing it, but we may not have. But it's something I just identified that I thought would be easier for us to administer. It's the additional members of the board shall have initial terms of office as follows: one every 1 year, one every 2 years, and 2 every 3 years. And we were just thinking that it might be easier just to keep everybody at 3 years so we're not jumping around all the time. And that would also keep it consistent with what the planning board does as well.
It would just say,
8
the very
members.
last sentence would just say, the members shall be appointed for terms of 3 years.
Yeah, and I can't take full credit for that. Vice Chairman Lemons actually pointed that out to me, so he thought that would be easier for the Board of Adjustment to administer moving forward.
So moved.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Good, motion carried, keep the terms 3 years.
Moving along, there's also something that I identified that we need to get added in there. I think everybody remembers the transitional housing facilities definition, as well as the spot that it had in the table of permitted uses and the supplemental standards that were approved in July. We also just identified that we need to make sure that we have that definition as well as that use and the supplemental standards in here. So just so everybody's familiar, if you want, I can read the definition if we want to go through that again. It would be adding a definition that is transitional housing facility, and it would be a facility configured as a multifamily development but operated and funded by a nonprofit, charitable, religious, or governmental organization to provide temporary housing and appropriate supportive services to families or individuals to facilitate movement to independent living over a 3 to 24 month period. A transitional housing facility may provide social services, counseling, and other programs to assist residents in the transition to permanent housing. The classification shall not be construed to include uses licensed or supervised by any federal, state, or county health welfare agency, such as group homes, halfway houses, boarding homes for children, and convalescent nursing homes. And this would also be adding it as a use to the table of permitted uses, and it would be adding it as a special use, and then there would also be supplemental standards with that that I believe I did not bring with me, so shame on me, but I believe the supplemental standards are Wes might have it. Thank you. It's good to have somebody backing you up. But the supplemental standards, which we would be adding to the zoning standards for special use permits, would be that there shall be 2 parking spaces for each dwelling unit and 1 for each 300 gross square footage of office area. That transitional housing facilities shall be screened from adjacent properties with an 8-foot opaque fence where adjacent to residential, and that transitional housing facilities shall have a maximum of 5 dwelling units. And I believe I said that, but that it's a special use permit in office institutional. So just so everybody is aware again. Thank you, Wes.
I don't think so. I think you're just clarifying, right? Okay.
We're just making sure it gets put back in because the board did approve that in July. So we just wanted to make sure it was in here.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. What's next?
Karen, did you have something else to say about transitional housing?
No,
Okay.
I was just going to say on 2-22, since we were in that.
Concerning the conditional zoning?
No, that's not there yet.
Okay.
I was going to say on 2-22, B, variance under variance, it says the basis from granting a variance. I think it means for granting a variance.
And the planning board chair actually also pointed that out.
Never mind.
So that's something that we can do administratively, and we were
awesome.
we had that on a list of things. So just so everybody's aware, we have some typos and stuff like that we're also addressing right now, and section numbers and page numbers will all be completely new and changed once the ordinance is adopted, because we'll be getting rid of all of this strike through So that's going to change the format of everything once we adopt it.
Yeah, so do you want to go to the PUD one now, or? No, y'all
That's
wanna talk
actually the
about it?
last I have on my list, and I think Alderwoman Sharkey might have something as well. But we can go to PUD now since we're in that.
Do you want to present it, or you also want me to?
I'll let you, because we talked about it on the phone, but I didn't
Yeah,
know the full breadth of what you wanted.
I think there was some confusion, maybe, and it's a simple fix to clarify that for conditional zoning that we already have. If you go to page 2-36, item number B2, it says no conditional zoning proposals shall be considered within the open space district, zoning district. That's already in there. And we could add just or PUD zoning district to there, I believe. Could we add that there, Wes? And then that would, I don't believe that a PUD can go through this process because PUD's its own process, but because since it has commercial in it, and this is for non-residential, then that would sort of make sure that it was clear.
I'd also point out that in the definitions that Ms. Cabral's letter asked if there was a definition of non-residential district, and there is, and it clearly says that the non-residential districts are OI, CBD, BD, HC, LI, and HI. So by definition, a PUD is not a non-residential, so therefore it's not eligible for conditional zoning, nor is open space.
Yes, so I don't know if there's a motion, but I did also want to add that, remember with all of these, whether it's conditional zoning or PUD, you are not obligated to ever rezone property. That's a legislative decision up to your discretion based on public input and a various amount of other factors. It's not like an administrative decision where a plat meets a set of standards and you have to approve it. And so I just wanted to point that out. I know that your current procedure is a little bit flawed. We're proposing to certainly modify that, but just always remember that. And so if there's no objection, the PUD will be added to number 2. No conditional zoning considered within open space or PUD. Okay, sounds like I don't hear any objections. Okay.
Is there anything else from members of the board that you feel like we need to address? No?
Why don't we just go down the line? Mr. Allen, anything further?
I'm great, thank you.
Alderman Spencer? Alderman Sharkey? Flo Davis? Mr. Lombardi? Mayor Pro Tem? No. So, Wes or Thomas, anything else we need to discuss? Anything?
Are we gonna schedule
Yeah, we'll
plan?
Our next.
So I think the biggest thing is just the schedule, the next date where we can have an additional public hearing after we incorporate these changes. Can you think of anything else, Wes?
So we talked about September 23rd. Is that still a good date? Everyone could look. That's
Yes,
a Wednesday.
So due to public notice requirements and having, a paper in circulation that only runs once a week on Wednesdays, the 23rd would probably be the best bet, I think, for Wes and myself. Are there any conflicts? I know Alderman Sharkey said that there might be a electricities meeting potentially.
They're going to meet. We've been meeting by telephone, and I just don't know if phase 3 is going to come into effect where they may be interested in trying to meet in person on the 23rd. I'll reach out to them to see if I can find that out. If so, I need to accompany Mr. Fisher to Wilson.
So our meeting will be at 6. Yeah, because our meeting is at 6.
Yeah, if we did 6 o'clock again, I think you'd probably have enough time. You might be a little tired, but
Completely valid point. I should be back in town, no problem, if we have a 6 p.m. versus a 3:30. Yeah.
So we were talking about having the Campbell land use plan that meeting, but I think given the importance of the UDO, it might be best if we push that back and handle the UDO.
Yes, definitely should be just the UDO. Thank you. 23rd, Wednesday the 23rd, September 23rd, 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. Okay. Any further business that we need to attend to before we adjourn? Okay. Again, I want to thank Planning Board. It's been a long process, and we're moving forward. Thank you, City Planner. Thank you, Wes McLeod. Appreciate it. Tanya, thank you. Appreciate it. Randy and Lisa, thank y'all for bringing this to the community. Thank the pilot for being here. And Mr. Alt, you continue to receive the award every month, and we'll make sure at the December meeting you'll be recognized.
I had one more typo, but would that be I can just get
Oh,
with you after.
2020. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We'll have a first and a second with Mr. Lombardi. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Public hearing adjourned. Thank y'all. Thank y'all very much.